Let's crack open a beer and share some thoughts.
Welcome to Opinions, and we are back in your ears once again. The beer is in the glass, and we are ready to go, aren't we, mate?
I have a Radler. I'm starting off nice and sensibly, Steve.
Well, I'm not starting off too bad. I'm on a premium Pils, but it is probably twice the ABV of your Radler.
Yep, so I have a Radler from Biermanufaktue Engel. Steve's Pils is also from the same place. And I must say thanks to the Sausage Man, who is I think they're the only ones who import these beers into the UK. So thank you very much for that. We will be sampling 6 different beers tonight and share our thoughts on it. And well, we've already put the beer in the glass, Steve. Ready to taste?
Let's dive in, because I'm quite thirsty this evening. Cheers.
Cheers. What's your Pils like, mate?
Crisp, quite earthy for a Pils. I think I'm not really picking up any typical Pils characteristics from it. So normally you might get a little bit of breadiness, maybe some floral notes in there, but I'm finding that quite earthy. It's got a really crisp, refreshing bitterness on the finish, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty certain when I had it, I wasn't getting too much of the bready notes because I had it a couple of weeks ago. But I quite like my Pils when they don't have too much of the bread going on. For me, I don't always need that in a lager, especially a Pils when I just need to, pick it up, crack it open, drink it, refresh myself, kind of thing. The Radler, it tastes like lemonade shandy. More so than a recent Radler I had from Paulana that I picked up from Beer Merchants. That one was very much more lemon than beer and sort of looked like it and tasted like it. I mean, this one still looks like beer in the glass, whereas the Paulana one definitely more towards the colour of the constituent fruit part. A bit like the Schaffelhofer. Is a bit pink in it, or a bit pinkish red. It's definitely a summer afternoon, or if you don't really want to have too much on the ABV side, it would definitely tick a few boxes. Interestingly, 500 milliliter bottles, screw tops.
Yeah, I've never seen screw tops on beer, not ever.
What, not even from maybe the States?
No. Well, I've seen the screw caps that still look like bottle tops, but that you can screw off.
Yeah.
These are more reminiscent of your 1980s lemonade bottle screw tops, where they've got the sort of metal, almost like the sort of top that you'd get probably on a medicine bottle as well, where it actually cracks the seal as you twist it. And I've never seen that on a beer before.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know how many more are out there, because it's definitely very uncommon to see over here. But what I would say, because I thought about it and I thought, I wonder if it'll affect the carbonation at all. But I'd have to say the first 3 beers I sampled, I didn't notice any discernible difference. And the Radler has got plenty of carbonation in it. So,
see, now that's really interesting, because when I had the Radler, I actually made a note that it didn't have a huge amount of life to it. Mine really didn't come alive. But much like yourself, I did very much think this is a summer beer, and it's a beer that you want to drink really, really cold as well, because I found as it began to warm, it started to get a little bit too sweet for me.
I can imagine that. It's not hiding its lemon influences, is it?
No, not at all. That's and it is like lemonade and lager rather than lemon and lager, and it's not in the nicest way possible. It's like Co-op own brand lemonade rather than Schweppes lemonade.
Yeah, it's not Schweppes or our whites, is it?
No, absolutely not.
It has definitely got that slightly sweeter own brand quality about it. Maybe even like a Panda Pop or something like that.
Yeah.
It is refreshing. I know what you're saying. I think I almost need it colder the beer, and probably could have done with the glass being cold as well, and the day being warmer and not the first Monday in February.
Yeah, we've definitely chosen the wrong time of year to try these beers. That's for sure. These would be. I think it's so strange, isn't it? How the time of the year can affect how you feel about a beer. I really don't want to be drinking cold lager tonight. I really don't. But here we are.
Yeah, I don't mind that so much, but definitely the Shandies and the Radlers always spring to mind. A hot day when you've got a bit of a dusty throat, a bit parched, and it really does do the job then. I'm enjoying it, but I would agree that if it gets a bit warm, I might find it a bit too sweet.
Yeah, well, let's not let it hang around in your glass for too long, because I don't really want to let mine warm up too much either. We've got a really interesting show tonight, and I love it when we do these shows. And this was something that I think we promised at in our end of year show for last year that we'd have a look at revisiting again. We're going to be doing another one of our fantasy themes this week, and this was suggested by a friend of the show, Paul at UNRCD, and this is basically the fantasy six-pack. So 6 beers, small pack only. What does your six-pack look like? Now, we're going to come on later on to some of our listener suggestions and also what we're calling the ultimate six-pack in terms of collating all of those listener suggestions. But you and I are going to do our six-packs throughout the show, aren't we? So we're going to do 2 now, 2 in the middle and 2 at the end, because we thought that way we get to kind of spread this out throughout the show and we get to enjoy it. And also our picks then don't necessarily trample all over what our listeners have put forward as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. And also, we may have a bit of back and forth when we're talking about the beers, and to do that for 12 different beers in one hit just seemed a bit much anyway.
Yeah.
And it's worked before, spreading these fantasy choices throughout the show.
Without further ado, let's get into our picks. Now, I know independently of each other, we've both chosen a bit of a theme for our six-packs. So as I'm talking, I'm now going to hand over to you and say, right, Martin, what's your theme and what's your first beer that's going into your fantasy six-pack?
A bit of rationale and background to the theme. So we went back and forth about this a few times, and I started various lists, which I'm not going to reveal what those lists are, because I feel that the fantasy options will be available for future shows and recordings anyway. I decided to let someone else tempt me. And by someone else, I used one of those beer books that you have on the shelf that someone bought for you a few years ago. My inspiration, 1,000 beers you must try before you die.
Excellent book. I've got that as well.
It's a chunky book, edited by Adrian Tierney Jones. But rather than going through the whole book, which anyone who knows this book, there's a lot of pages in this book, given there's 1,001 beers, I went for the speciality section, or what they class as a speciality section, to at least give me a bit of a confined. And then within that, it was only beers I hadn't tried before. So this fantasy six-pack is all new beers to me.
Really interesting, because mine is the complete opposite. So my theme is all about time and place and reliving a particular time and place for each of the beers that I've got in my six-pack.
One of my options would have been very similar to that, Steve. So I'm actually quite glad I haven't gone down a same sort of route. I decided to let someone else's words tempt me to place it into my fantasy six-pack.
Love it. So absolutely love it. Yeah.
I've made it, as we do, I've made a list. It's on Untapped. So I'm going to go, rather than in the book order, I'm going to go in ABV.
Makes
starting
sense.
with the lowest,
yeah.
Which is pretty much how we would probably drink our beers if we were sitting here now anyway. Beer number 1, Cantillon, Louis Pepe Framboise. Like a lot of Cantillon beers, this is a 5%. It is a lambic. The Framboise, the raspberries, and I did have to double check, because obviously I have drunk quite a bit of Cantillon over the years, and having visited the brewery 4 times now as well. So I'm quite partial to it. But I had a look on Untapped, and apparently I've never checked it in, so therefore I've never had it. And if it's pre-2013, I probably can't remember it anyway. So it's one which, you know, I always felt I should have a Cantillon in there, and it was quite handy that Cantillon beers appeared quite a lot in the speciality section. And 5%, quite a sensible ABV as well. Nice little starter. I do like that style of beer anyway. And people who listen to the show will know that I've mentioned Cantillon a few times. You know, I think they were my brewery tap room with Colonel, if I remember. Almost like a fancy tap room if I could choose two places. So yeah, I've got beer number 1, Louis Pepe Framboise from Brasserie Cantillon.
Interesting choice. And it's interesting you say that, obviously you've mentioned Cantillon a few times, because I think listeners, if anybody wants to play bingo throughout this show and ticking off what they think we're going to be saying, that's probably one of the bingo choices that you can go for. Certainly my first beer in my 6-pack will be a bingo choice, and will probably come as no surprise to anyone. So I've decided to go in reverse date order. So I'm going to go most recent beers first, going back to the older beers that I want to see featuring in my 6-pack. So my first entry is not that we need a reminder of 2020, but I wanted a reminder of some of the good that came out of 2020. And I wanted a beer that, if it's in my 6-pack and I'm going to be able to go to over and over again, is an absolute smasher, an absolute crusher. No surprise to anyone, Elusive Brew Oregon Trail is the first beer in my 6-pack.
Bingo. There's a whole load of listeners that just said exactly the same thing.
Yes, yeah, everybody's out with that one. No, it was just for me. I looked at the styles of beer that was going in this as well, and I thought, you know what, I do want a crushable, pintable West Coast IPA, and I do want a memory of 2020, because there's so much bad that came out of last year and continues into this year, but there was also so much good as well, and that's one of the reminders of the good. And I almost want to be able to go back to that first time that I tried it and relive that over and over again. And that's the mentality that I had when putting together this list. It's not just about having that beer in the list, it's about when you open that beer, you're actually reliving that moment as well from maybe the first time that you had that beer.
I think that's important with that theme you've chosen, Steve, because what you're trying to recreate, as much as you've enjoyed the Oregon Trail 2nd, 3rd, 4th multiple times, is recreating the first time. So almost having your memory wiped and tasting it for the first time and going, wow. Mm-hmm. And I presume that's what you've got in your head for the rest of these beers as well, then.
For all of them, yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a great shout. I think it's a really nice way of doing it, because you will have 2020, as you say. You know, we don't need to go on about it. It's been plenty in there. But yes, that was obviously a plus, and some of the innovation that was shown by brewers as well. But you will have beers, I presume now, which will also be where you had it and perhaps who you had it with. Mm-hmm. So shared moments which live long in the memory, as well as the beer itself, is what I'm sort of guessing from what you're saying is coming up.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see as we go through. So, what's beer number 2 for you, mate?
Beer number 2, again, fairly sensible ABV, 5.3%. Survival 7-grain stout. So this is from Hopworks Urban Brewery. And what I also had to do was actually check that these beers still existed. I didn't want beers which don't exist. Bearing in mind the book was last updated, or my one, in 2013. So I did check that all these beers are in production. So, you know, again, I'm using what's in the book to tempt me. So it looks wonderful in the glass and the picture. The bottle looks really good. I mean, it's maybe in a can by now. I don't know. This is
more than likely.
No, just to give you an idea, I'll just read you the tasting notes. So, roasted grains and coffee aroma give way to a semi-sweet chocolate creaminess that enters enters the dance with additional layers of strong Java. Java's a coffee, is it?
Java's coffee.
Yeah. It ends with a clean, smooth finish and a slight suggestion of pleasant bitterness that leaves you wanting more. And I thought, that sounds like the kind of stout that I could have a few of. I don't want every beer in my fantasy six-pack to be extraordinary and massive and me having to think about it. This sounds like a really, really good stout. And at 5.3%, I can have a few of those.
Mm. It's a really brave choice you've gone for, because you're going for 6 beers that you don't know.
Yep.
What if you don't like one of them? You're kind of stuck with it then, aren't you? I
am, and that is the risk I am taking here. But if these 6 beers ever land on my doorstep by magic
in that 6-pack,
then I shall take the risk. So, your second beer, Steve.
My second beer is, I'm going to get straight into this one. It is DuPont Avec les Bonveaux. And it is from 2019 when Emma and I went to Belgium. We went to the place that I can't pronounce that's got all the puppets in it in Brussels. And I saw it on the menu and I thought, well, you know what? It was quite soon after we had recorded with Jezza. And I was like, Jezza's always banging on about this beer. What's so great about it? Ordered a bottle of it, and that first sip of it, I just instantly fell in love with this beer. Those kind of rich, peppery notes that it has. There's funky, crisp bitterness on the finish. It's a beer that I just want to go back to again and again. So it's going in my 6-pack, but it's going in my 6-pack with the slight rider of it's the 750ml bottle that's going in my 6-pack. None of this 375ml lark. It's the big bottle that's going in my 6-pack.
So that's a West Coast IPA and a Belgian beer. Now, 2 or 3 years ago, Steve, not sure that Belgian beer would have landed in that 6-pack.
I don't think so. No, and I think it's I suppose in the interests of broadening horizons, like I say, sometimes you listen to other people's recommendations and you're in a time and a place and it just feels right. Maybe if I'd had that beer sat in a bar in the UK, it wouldn't have had quite the impact on me. But being sat in this wonderful bar in Brussels, surrounded by creepy puppets staring at you after kind of the best part of a day traveling to get there as well, it was just perfect refreshment. And, it's a beer that since then I've just gone back to again and again. And I absolutely love it. So, yeah, that's one that I want to be able to have in my 6-pack to revisit over and over again.
Yeah, it is a cracking beer. And I also think, like you say, shortly after we'd done the show with Jezza as well, so you're feeling a little bit more inspired, perhaps. That he rates this beer massively. So, yeah, what strength is it, Steve? Remind me.
It's 9.6. It's almost like, I think the only way I can describe it is like an Imperial Saison.
Because it's a very deceptive one, though, isn't it? Because
it doesn't taste it.
That 9% plus is really well hidden because of everything else that's going on in that beer. So, okay, we've got Crushable West Coast, and we're using Crushable still over 5% and 9% plus Belgian.
Yeah, it's a great start. It's a great start.
It's a cracking start. You might not remember the last 4 beers you have in your fantasy 6-pack, but I look forward to picks 3 and 4 later in the show.
Yeah, and what we'll do at the end of the show, we will just run through our 6 again, so people don't have to kind of remember what they are through the show. So until we come back to our next picks on the fantasy 6-pack, what standout beers have we been drinking since the last show, mate? Anything that you've had that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I've discovered Yonder Brewing in Somerset.
Okay, these are foragers?
Yes. No, that's traditionally, that's how they started up.
Right,
and
okay.
My first experience of them a couple of years ago at a beer festival was very much in that sort of funky, foraged kind of character beer. However, I must have mentioned Yonder in the vicinity of my phone at some point because Yonder adverts kept on springing up on my social media after that. And I noticed they were doing some 6-pack offers, 3 6-packs for the price of 2. And I thought, okay, looked at the prices, asked a few questions of our bottle share friends, and everyone seemed, fairly comfortable about Yonder so far. But I didn't go for anything particularly wild and wacky. These ones in the 440 cans. So they had an English bitter, a Hell's, and a more of a farmhouse type of beer. But the two that I want to talk about, the bitter and the Hell's. The bitter is at 3.8%. Really nice. Still had a nice malty backbone, but it was still quite flavoursome. There was definitely a lot more aroma and flavour coming from the hops than maybe you'd expect in an English bitter. It felt very much like a modern bitter made for the 21st century. And the Yonder Cool Box, the 3.5% Hells, crushable. And at 3.5%, they had packed bags of flavour into that as well. But there was no funky notes coming out. The same with the bitter. And I haven't looked too much into what they've used to make either of these beers. But I don't think you would associate either of those beers with a brewery that definitely started off as foragers. And I'm pretty certain born out of Wild Beer, or one or two of them who used to work at Wild Beer. It's the same neck of the woods, isn't it? I was pretty pleased, actually, because I, again, took a bit of a punt, haven't tried them before. And, under 4%, basically a bitter and a lager. It was nice. Nice cans. Been good, although one of the cans, the bitter, and I think you mentioned it a little bit recently, Steve, when we were chatting, just a bit too full, that can was, a couple of times.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit fed up with cans that are over full because they just go everywhere. There's nothing you can do to stop it from happening.
No, this can has been just sitting in the fridge all day, so it hasn't like it's been rolled around and thrown about. Opened it, and it wasn't like loads came out, but enough came out. But I was thinking, I've got to clean up now.
Yeah.
Wonder was good, and also dived into the cellar over the weekend, and had the Wild Beer Jambo.
How was that?
It was the 2017 vintage, and it was amazing. It's into my beer of the year contenders, even though it's a beer from 4 years ago. It's the 8.5% version. There was no hint of alcohol really in this beer. There was no burn, no nothing. It was just like having raspberries dunked in liquid dark chocolate. That's the best way I can describe it. But without it being, bear in mind, 750 bottle, and I was sharing with Michelle, but for whatever reason, she wasn't getting on with it. So I did have a large percentage of that 750 bottle, but it never got sweet or sickly either. So yeah, that was tasting, cracking. It's one of those things though. Now I've had it, that's it.
Yeah, you can't have it again.
It's gone.
Yeah.
I have no further Jambo 2017s. I don't know whether I picked the right time to have it, but 4 years on seems quite a while. If you have got a 2017 and you are tempted, then it is tasting absolutely fantastic at the moment. That was just glorious. It was a lovely beer on the Saturday, I think early evening, when it was just starting to get dark and it was still peeing it down outside. Bit of a warm cuddle from the Wild Beer.
Nice, very nice.
So, what about yourself? Anything leaping out at you?
Yeah, a couple. First one I'm going to mention is a bit of a revisit. For some reason, I just really, really fancied trying this beer again, and that's Dark Star's Revelation, which is a beer that I haven't had for a while, and I saw it on the shelf, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna have that. I'm gonna try that again. And it's just as wonderful as I remember it being. Proper malty, biscuity, full-on citrus hops, lovely earthy bit of finish. Just a real delight to go back and revisit a beer that I literally haven't had. I think it was about 3 years ago since I last had it. Really, really tasty stuff. Really enjoyed that.
Oh, excellent. It is. You are right. It is quite nice to do that revisit sometimes after such a long time, but equally to then find that the beer is still very pleasing. Yeah,
because obviously there's always that kind of worry that, well, it's mass produced for supermarkets. This is post Fuller's Asahi takeover. is it still going to be the same beer that I remember? And it was. But again, it instantly prompted a load of people on Twitter just to really upset me by saying, oh, that beer is wonderful on cask. And yes, Revelation on cask is an absolute beautiful beer. It really is.
Can't deny that. And, they've often, I think that would be definitely something that people would say about a lot of the beers from Dark Star. But Revelation, right up there as a quality cask beer.
Yeah.
You'd have to put it on your list of something to get hold of. But again, even in the Fuller's pubs in London, they tended to only have Hophead most of the time.
It's not one that you really see that much. That's the thing. But still, it's nice to know that the bottles are still tasting fairly decent. So I did enjoy that. Now the rest of my my shout outs this week are again probably going to be a little bit surprising in the same sort of vein that you mentioned about one of my 6-pack picks with the Bonvo. First one I want to mention are Devotion, who are a new brewery that are just on the Essex-Suffolk border. I think they're over in Suffolk. They're inhabiting an old pub, which I believe was called the Fox. And I think Devotion translates to the Fox, who are basically producing small batch Belgian style beers. Now they've currently got 4 available. They've got the blonde, double, triple, and quad, and they're only available to buy at the moment through Beautiful Beers in Bury, which is a small specialist beer shop, but they do have an online presence as well. Now I bought them back in October, I think it was. I bought 2 of each, and we had them fresh back in October, and they weren't great. But a lot of people that are much more experienced with Belgian beer than I am were saying online, these are gonna need time to age. And then over the last couple of weeks, I've seen those same people trying the beers again and saying this beer is wonderful now. So at the weekend, Em and I went through all 4 of them again. And they have all come really, really good. The triple in particular has got this beautiful spiciness to it, spicy sweet, sort of honey sweet finish. The only one that's still a bit iffy, maybe needs a little bit more time still, is the quad, because it was very, very lively when I opened it. It just exploded out of the bottle, so I lost a little bit of it because I think the yeast is still doing its work, sort of thing. It's still going away and fermenting, but really, really enjoyed them, and great to have found this tiny little brewery that are fairly local to me as well, that are producing these fantastic Belgian inspired beers, and I think they've got a farmhouse saison coming out as well in a few weeks. So that's with this kind of my newfound love for traditional Belgian farmhouse saisons. That's certainly one that I want to give a go and try when it comes out.
Blimey, if 2015 Steve could hear 2021 version.
No, it is literally a revelation. And then just continuing a theme, I suppose, the final one that I want to talk about was Mind Games by Thornbridge and Firestone Walker, which is the gin barrel-aged saison that they released.
I picked up a few of these, one to have fresh and a bit of aging going on. What did you think?
Mate, it was spectacular. You talk about beers going on sort of an early beer of the year list. That is absolutely it. It was fantastically dry. Tasted, had all the kind of elements that you would get from a gin and tonic. So lots of botanicals going on, lots of bitterness in there, sweetness, dryness, just lots of dryness. It was literally mouth-sappingly dry. But yeah, just a really, really great beer. I mean, it came in my last Thornbridge Beer Club box, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give that a try. And it's just a delicious beer. It's just the stuff coming out of the Thornbridge barrel aging program at the moment is just stunning.
Yeah, I've really, really enjoyed that beer. And I had this sort of feeling about, Thornbridge, because they've been around in craft beer terms for a long time now, sometimes get overlooked, and especially because we know that their beers are always solid. They rarely disappoint if you're talking about their staples. And even when they bring out their different pale ales and lighter versions, you'll trust them. But some of the other stuff they've been chucking out, and especially that I see in your Thornbridge Beer Club box and stuff like that, there is a lot else that they produce that perhaps doesn't quite grab the headlines as it would do for someone else doing it.
Yeah. That one in particular, that Mind Games was just outstanding. Just an incredible piece of brewing that is, and the way that they've used the gin barrels to impart the flavours and the characteristics of gin into that beer as well. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, did you just get the one in your box?
I did, yes, but I also got the big Mother's Ruin that they've just done, which I think is I think that's a golden ale that's been aged in gin barrels as well.
Right.
But I'm holding on to that one. It's big 750ml bottle. It's like the serpent bottle shape. But I'm holding on to that one until the summer because I think that's one that deserves a hot day to be enjoyed on.
Oh, that definitely sounds interesting, that one.
Just one more thing to mention. As folks are listening to this show, we would have had our 6th birthday virtual bottle share this past Tuesday. And we haven't done it as we record, but we're really excited about what we've got coming up for this, aren't we?
One of the bottle shops in Chelmsford, Hopsters, run by our friend Ollie, has decided to pick and curate a box for us. 6 beers. He has delivered them, and they are all wrapped and numbered as well. I think we sort of give a bit of a thing of £30, so work within that budget. And all we literally have to do is turn on our computer, connect to Zoom, and Ollie will take us through the beers.
Yeah, it's great because normally listeners might know that normally when we do our birthday bottle shares at the Ale House, we normally, rather than bringing beers for that bottle share, we normally buy all the beers from the Ale House as a thank you for them hosting us throughout the year. Obviously, we've not been able to do that this year, and because they're not offering takeaways either, we've not been able to buy the beers from there for it, which I think probably would have been our first option if we could have done. But we still wanted to almost partner up with a local business, and Hopsters were the obvious one. And yeah, Ollie's been great, and I'm really, really looking forward to this. So folks probably would have seen the carnage and fallout on Twitter by now, but it's one for us. We're kind of talking about something that hasn't happened yet, although like it has, but we are looking forward to it. And
I've got no doubt it'll be a cracking evening. It's a shame it's not in person, but I am still really pleased that there's going to be 10 of us or so enjoying beer, all the same beers together at the same time through the technological wizardry of Zoom. I think it's going to be excellent.
Yeah, which is something we haven't done yet. We generally enjoy 1 or 2 beers the same on bottle share, but this is going to be every beer we're going to be drinking at the same time. So it is actually going to be like a bottle share, and it's going to be great. So it's a massive thanks to Ollie for sorting that out. And really, really looking forward to it. Right then, let's, because the beer is running out rapidly, so let's get through this week's news. First up, we've still got no news on when anything may reopen, not just pubs and bars, but life itself. And as a result of that, we've seen a huge number of cancellations this last couple of weeks, haven't we? So first one was Glastonbury have announced that they've been postponed. Great British Beer Festival have cancelled. So we thought, well, we're as big as both of those events, so we should probably actually postpone the Summer Sesh again this year. It's not something that we've thought about lightly, but realistically, I don't think hospitality is going to be ready for pub crawls in June. I really don't.
Yeah, I think that we bounced back about this pretty much since the turn of the year, and things haven't really changed. Things haven't really improved enough for everyone to feel comfortable. I also wouldn't want people feeling they should be booking some travel or accommodation, and then having to go through the pain of refunds. And like you say, Steve, I don't think it might be a while before pub crawls come back as well, which is essentially what our Summer Sesh and our Crimbo crawls have been. It is a pub crawl by any other name.
That's what it's about, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, It will still be Birmingham, but it will be summer 2022 now.
Probably, yeah. Hopefully, yes.
Well, yeah. Actually, yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to think that we're putting it off another year. But in place of that, we can't just let it pass again without doing something. So we are once again taking the summer sesh online. We're bringing it forward a little bit. So we're going to do it at the beginning of May. We're looking at the 7th, 8th and 9th of May. And yes, you heard that right. That's 3 days.
7th, 8th and 9th. How many sessions have we planned, Steve?
Over the course of those 3 days, we are planning 8 different sessions that you'll be able to get involved in. Now, we're not quite ready to go live with all of the details about all of those sessions yet. We just wanted to give you all a heads up in terms of the date so you can get it in your diary. And we will have some more information for you towards the end of March, beginning to April, about what the 8 sessions are going to look like, how you can go about booking those. And also, we are talking again to a local supplier to us about potentially putting together a box of beer that you can buy so that if you're on a session, you can be drinking some of the same beers as other people. So lots of planning going on, but that's as much information as we can give you about it at the moment.
Yeah, all I'm going to add is the planning involves Steve having an idea and a spreadsheet.
that's how most things end up happening, mate. It really is.
I'm very excited about some of the possible plans that if our people and their people get it all on, this could be something really quite special. Still never going to be as good as in person. We acknowledge that. No,
but it's the best that we can offer for now for you folks, our listeners, because we still want to see your smiling faces on the screen.
Definitely, and we've had so much fun on all the other virtual sessions we've done, so I've got no doubt this will be no different, just maybe a little bit more ambitious.
Yes, yeah, but so keep an ear out for more information about that. Next up is the news that St. Peter's Brewery in Suffolk, those of the strange shaped bottles, I think not so much anymore. I don't think they do those medicine shaped bottles anymore. Has been bought by a private group of individuals for an undisclosed sum. So it was founded 23 years ago by John Murphy, who's decided that it's time for him to move on. The new team is going to be led by Derek Jones, who comes from more than 20 years of global beer experience, including time at Molson Coors and Sab Miller. So they're very excited about this new chapter for St. Peter's Brewery. I've got some thoughts about this. So St. Peter's are a brewery that kind of, I think, always get a little bit overlooked in terms of the beers that they offer. They are very, very traditional beers. Like we said, best known for those very iconic bottles that they've had. And they also have this anomaly of owning a pub in London called the Jerusalem Tavern, which I'm not sure if you've been to it, mate, but when you step into that place, it's like stepping back in time.
It always takes me a while to get my head around it, even though I know it, but St. Peter's own it. It's an interesting one. I mean, I can't pretend to be a fan of St. Peter's. I've enjoyed their beers over the years in various places. And yes, those medicine bottles are quite striking. I wonder if people who are fans of St. Peter's are a little bit nervy that someone's coming in who has got previous experience at Molson Coors and Sab Miller, though. So,
well, it'll be interesting to see what way they take it. I mean, I would anticipate we're going to see a rebrand. Will be the first thing that we might see.
Yeah, because not all the bottles are the same now. It used to be that all the range was in those kind of medicine bottles.
Yeah.
I imagine they're also not the cheapest.
No. And I think the other thing we might see is maybe some renaming of some of their beers to bring them a little bit more up to date, and maybe experimenting with some new styles, which is never a bad thing. Or they could just go the complete other way and continue with the tradition that they have.
I think some of the stuff you suggested there will happen. Maybe not straight away. You know, come in, do the steady ship kind of thing to start off with. Don't make any waves. Wait until, see how the market picks up. The guy coming in is going to have his own plans and his own wishes and own desires.
And whatever team he's put together, it's if you think that the experience that he's got is 20 years experience in those big beer companies. He must have put together a team of expertise and knowledge that are going to maybe help turn St. Peter's around a little bit. And, maybe we will see some new things from them.
Yeah, well, I think it's an interesting one. It's definitely an interest, maybe one to watch.
Yes, yeah. So while we're talking takeovers as well, the news dropped today that Heineken have bought the remaining stock in Brixton. So 3 years ago, it was probably another 49% job, wasn't it, that they bought some shares in Brixton Brewery. And then much the same as Lagunitas before that, 3 years later, they've bought the remaining shares in that company, and Heineken now own Brixton outright. So probably the question on everyone's mind is, how long until we hear this from Beavertown?
To be fair, that didn't occur to me.
Did it not? That was the first thing I thought was, well, they've done it to Lagunitas, they've done it to Brixton. It seems to be Heineken's MO is that they buy 49% and then 3 years later they buy the rest.
Yeah, I'm not saying it. You're not right, but it hadn't really occurred to me. I was just interested. The Brixton one's just always been odd, anyway, whether it be a minority stake, majority stake, or 100%. Most people seem to think that regardless of the beers, one way or the other, Brixton Brewery was bought because it says Brixton as being a popular location in London. It's a known area of London. You could compare it to, someone having Soho Brewery. Oh, hold on a second. I'll buy that one because people know Soho.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we never found out what the minority stake was, but their next chapter that they've got on their website very much says about the Heineken bit, but then talks about what Brixton have been doing and what they're going to be doing in the future, and about how the same people are going to be running it. But people will wonder if Brixton Brewery will sort of stay as they are throughout the time, because if it's about the brand, a bit like Beavertown, do you need the brand to be brewed in Brixton? Yeah. Decent cost of real estate there. Maybe there's a little corner of Beaver World that could brew Brixton beers. So, who knows? But yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's a good point about Beavertown. If the MO, so when would Beavertown be then?
Oh, I think that would be due this year as well, because I'm sure Brixton happened. It was quite close to when Beavertown happened.
Yeah, so if it's going to be sometime during 2021, if it's going to happen, if Heineken have got the cash available, and let's assume they have asset liquidity, for want of a better phrase for a beer company, then I would say that yes, it is a possibility, but it's obviously going to be a bigger outlay than what they've done for Brixton.
Yes, yeah, another one to keep a watching brief on.
Interesting. I don't think it will land well if that is their MO, because then people will just assume that's their MO as soon as they acquire anyone else in a minority stake.
Yeah.
Suspicions and hackles will raise straight away, won't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is a lot of news this week, so bear with us. Next up is the story that Belgium now only has 5 Trappist breweries permitted to carry the authentic Trappist product logo. And this was after news that no monks now live at, is it Achel or Achel Abbey? And therefore, because it doesn't meet the requirements of the production being overseen by monks, it can no longer call itself a Trappist product.
Yes, it loses the accreditation, isn't it? I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. So,
does that mean the beers are going, or does it just mean they've lost the accreditation?
I think the beers are staying, but they just can't call themselves Trappist beers anymore. So I assume they'll just revert to being called Abbey beers.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, when I go through my head about Trappist breweries, that probably would have been the last one I would have been able to name.
It's kind of the forgotten one, isn't it? A little bit. That and the one in Italy.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got the news that Aldi are selling off beer that's been made by 13 breweries, which should have gone into pubs and therefore consequently would have gone to waste. So they're saying that this is part of their commitment to supporting British suppliers. Some of the beers that they're featuring as part of this are Hall and Woodhouse Tanglefoot, Harbour Brewing Puffin Tears, Hook Norton Old Hooky, Marston's Warsteiner, Shepherd Neame Spitfire Gold, St Peter's Best Bitter, Thornbridge Shelby, and West Berkshire Brewery Snake Oil. Now, this is a different snake oil to what we've drunk in the past.
Yeah.
It's a couple of ABVs lower.
There's some interesting ones in there because the picture on the website shows Shepherd Neame in their clear bottles. Also, Tanglefoot from Hall and Woodhouse, I think, is a clear bottle beer as well.
Yeah.
And West Berkshire Brewery Snake Oil, to be honest, I'd never, even the original Snake Oil, which was what, 7% plus?
7.5%, wasn't it?
I don't recall seeing that in pubs, particularly.
No.
It was cans, weren't it?
I'm suspicious about this. I'm going to say it because it's kind of that time of year when Aldi would be running one of their beer festivals anyway. So I do question whether these beers would have been going into Aldi anyway, and that they're trying to make a story out of nothing really here.
I think there's an element of that, and plus that some of those beers are definitely some of the ones that I would have picked up from Sainsbury's years ago as well.
Yeah,
like the Tanglefoot. Shelby, that's already been in Aldi, hasn't it? Or one of the supermarkets. So it's not a new one in there.
It's not, and I'm going to say this. I don't imagine Thornbridge are having any trouble shifting their beers at the moment.
No, and also I think Shelby went straight into bottle anyway. I don't think was it ever intended as a draft beer in wide circulation?
Yes, it was brewed to coincide with the opening of Colmore Tap because of the Peaky Blinders reference.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it will give people who go to Aldi regularly a couple of new beers that they can pick up at a decent price, you know, because Aldi have a certain price point, don't they?
Yeah.
Or price range. Yeah. Good luck to them. I mean, yes, it does feel like they are making a bit more of it than they needed to, though.
I think so as well. Now, this next story, bear with us on this one because it's not exactly beer, but there's news come out in the last few days that the contactless limit on debit cards could be raised to £100. Now, the reason why we're mentioning this is because our second most popular poll ever was when we asked the question of, are you a fan of contactless bars and tap rooms? We had over 1,200 votes for that poll. And I think this is interesting because this is quite a hike. We've seen the raise from £30 to £45 early on during the lockdown last year. And now we're seeing them saying that we may raise it again because that's the way consumer spending is going and there's more confidence in maybe the contactless era than there was previously. I just think from our point of view, when pubs and bars do begin to reopen, it might be interesting to revisit this poll to see if people's views on contactless have changed, because I know mine certainly have. I very, very rarely have cash on me these days. And the times that I do need cash, I needed to put some air in my tyres a few days ago, and I couldn't because I had no cash on me to buy air. And it's interesting to see how our habits have changed.
On a slight tangent, you know the Co-op petrol station near you?
Yeah.
That tyre pressure one actually has a card machine on it now.
Yes, there are a couple that have now got card machines. And even that, because that's a 50p purchase that you're making.
Yeah.
And before, lots of places wouldn't even accept anything under a fiver.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. And I think it may change people's views about it. £100 is a bit of a hike. Be one hell of an evening out there, wouldn't it? If you're just drinking beer and you can do the contactless up to 100, dangerous times, mate.
And that's the thing. Relating that to beer, it could be very dangerous.
Yeah,
because you just tap.
Tap. Yeah,
but we'll come back to that one. And the final news story this week is probably the one that caused the most waves on Twitter in the last week, which was the rebrand of Anchor Brewing in the States. So if you haven't seen this, you must have been living under a rock. But we will put a link in the show notes to where you can read all about it, particularly a great blog by Pete Brown on this one. Anchor have gone from very, very distinctive, traditional branding to very, very bland, modern branding. My view on that there. That's not our view. And they've listed a whole host of reasons why they've done it. And Pete in particular in his blog points out that's great, but the new branding could very easily get lost on a shelf because it looks a lot like a lot of the other things that are out there, whereas traditional Anchor brewing stood out. I guess I would relate that to Sierra Nevada. Their branding stands out on a shelf. You're initially drawn towards it because of that quaintness almost about it. And I kind of look at this in terms of, if that was Sierra Nevada, being the fan that I am of their beers, I would be horrified if they had rebranded to look like what Anchor have rebranded.
Well, you'd have a little cry, wouldn't you, Steve?
I'd have a big cry, mate. There's no little about it. That would be a big cry.
You referenced Pete Brown's blog. It's an excellent article and obviously ties in quite nicely with his recent book, Beer by Design. And he does go through it. He tries to give it a bit of a fair hearing. I am in the same camp as you, Steve. It now looks like a brewery who have decided that their market is supermarkets. And let's face it, there's a lot of beer in American supermarkets that's high quality. And I actually think that Anchor beers are very good. But also, I loved the labelling on the bottles. And the bottle, I didn't need to read anything. The front of the label gave me the impression of history, provenance, told me what the name of the beer was, and, give me the style and everything else I need to know. Now, the new cans give a bit of a story. It's on the back of the can. It doesn't really, it's lost because you actually have to buy that can to then read the back of it generally, especially if they're in any sort of 6-packs or multi-packs. For me, it's very disappointing. The rationale, even that is a bit weird because they've definitely gone for revolution rather than evolution because, again, and Peter's illustrated it brilliantly, like with Budweiser, how many different iterations that Budweiser's been through over the years, but it's always looked like Budweiser.
But they're also proud of that as well.
And so they should be. I mean, it's not a beer for us, but there's millions of people who love Budweiser. And I reckon if you made a Budweiser can to look like the Anchor can, well, then you'd see some uproar.
The thing is, if you time traveled from the 1920s to now, the Budweiser brand, you'd still recognize it. Whereas you couldn't do that with Anchor now. It looks like a completely different beer.
Oh, yeah. Someone would say, oh, well, I presume the brewery must have closed down. Someone's bought the brand and they're started up again. It's not the same people.
Yeah.
And I know that they said that the beer's the same. And I've just said, well, I quite like the beers, but it isn't the same as the 355 milliliter bottles that they had. I think they've gone just a step too far, too quickly. They may well turn around and say, well, yeah, and in 18 months' time, they show increased sales. But I don't see it standing out on a beer shelf in a specialist shop or in a supermarket.
Yeah, I just think it's going to get lost. And I think one of the points that Pete made, and I know we've got a question about this later on from one of our listeners as well, so we'll dig back into this then. But one of the comparisons that Pete made in his blog was to the Marks and Spencer own range that they do with regional breweries. Yeah. And it looks almost identical. It's single color, white text, white logos. And that's all it is now. It's like you say, it's lost all of that history, it's lost all that provenance about it. It's just lost everything that made it Anchor beer. But
yeah, the only thing
that's a bit extreme actually. The beer inside is probably still the same.
Yes. That's what they say, so that's what we hope. But for me, I would say the same as you. If I'm now looking on a website thinking about getting some US beers and I didn't know Anchor, there'd be no reason for me to pick it up.
You're just going to breeze past it, aren't you? Let's be honest.
So, but most people had a similar view. The ones which I saw that were countering that view were definitely from a bit more inside the industry, a bit more on the PR and a bit more on the sales side. Mm. Yeah, I mean, the actual it's all very clean, and all that kind of stuff. But if you know what came before, then it's a shadow.
Yeah. But like we say, there's a link in the show notes to Pete Brown's blog. Have a read of that. And share your thoughts with us. Let us know what you think about this. Use that hashtag opinions. As I said, that was a bumper edition of the news. It's been a while since we've had that much news. My glass is long empty of the premium pills from Engel. Yeah, it's a perfectly drinkable pills. Would probably be much better enjoyed on a hot day, but perfectly drinkable, very enjoyable. What about your Radler, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to drag it out as much as I could, but it was gone before halfway through the news, mate, because as you say, a bit of a bumper session, that one. Yeah, it was nice. It's a beer which deserves to be drunk cold and quickly, to be honest. It's not a sit down, save it and think about it kind of beer, but nothing wrong with it. It's very enjoyable. And I would say it's probably a little bit more to my tastes compared to the Paulaner Radler that I had recently, because that was a bit thicker, a bit more lemon. This definitely felt like Top Deck with a bit more alcohol in there, rather than me thinking I was being quite, a man when I was about 8 drinking a Top Deck shandy.
Great stuff. So let's move on to our next beer this evening. So I've got the Keller Pils from Engel. What are you on this time, mate?
Well, very similar. Mine's called the Kellerbier. I presume it's around about the it's 5.4%. I have leapt up the ABV scale.
Oh, I'm still on 4.9, so I'm going steady now.
You're going steady. So, let's dive in.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, yeah, that's more to my tastes. That one.
It's good, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really good. That is. There's a little bit of the breadiness in that, which brings a little bit of sweetness with it as well. The carbonation is all kind of dialed down. It's got that softer carbonation. And it just comes through on a really, really clean, crisp finish on that. That's actually quite delicious, that Keller Pils.
The Kellerbier seems to share some characteristics that you just described there, actually, with a bit of breadiness and a bit of sweetness, almost a little bit of honey coming through on there as well. Like I said, 5.4%. It is very refreshing. It feels like a bigger beer, obviously, compared to the Radler I had earlier. Yeah. But I have to admit, the Keller Pils you've got, I was most impressed with that.
Yeah, it's really tasty.
I must shout out, but the glass that they also sent to us, it's got a real feel about it, hasn't it?
It's a proper sort of stein, isn't it? And it does fit the beer perfectly in the glass as well. Yeah,
and it's a heavy glass without liquid in it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a pretty dangerous weapon, I would suggest.
it is, but it's nice to actually drink the beers from the glass they're intended to be in as well.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I've been impressed. And again, all of the beers share the same screw top. They're all 500 millilitres. But yeah, the Keller beer feels bigger. It feels like the sort of thing I have experienced before when I've been over to Germany. There's quite a bit going on with that one. I'm enjoying that.
So while we're enjoying those, let's get into this week's questions.
Opinions, 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 opinions.
So first of all, the poll that we're not going to feature tonight was the one that we ran this past weekend, which simply asked, is there a single beer that has had the biggest impact on your beer journey? 373 votes, 70% of people said yes, 30% of people said no. Over 150 replies to this one of people just instantly giving us this beer, this one. So the top three that we got back in reverse order were Brewdog Punk IPA, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, and Thornbridge Jaipur. I'm not surprised by any of those.
No, it was only this evening when I first saw the top three that you'd compiled today from the comments. And, thank you very much to everyone who did comment on the poll as well. They are all very obvious, but they're obvious for good reason. Especially Punk IPA in its day. Forget about what people think about it now, and opinions differ quite widely on that. But I would suggest that Jaipur is probably the biggest impact on my beer journey back in 2011. I think you've got on record about your love of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale not moments ago.
Yeah, 2012 for me was the moment with Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
and Punk IPA and everything else connected to Brewdog when they first started making waves. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and there are two comments that sum this poll up perfectly. So as I say, won't be able to cover all of the comments on this one because this isn't the one we're featuring tonight. But if you do want to see all of the comments, there is a link in the show notes to the question. You can click through on that and have a read through. But these two comments I think really sum it up. So first up from Simple Things at ST Fermentations was about to vote yes and then thought, what about and so I had to vote no. Which I think a lot of people probably found themselves in that situation that they couldn't pinpoint a single beer. But then this one for me really, really nails it. And this is from Hollybush at Hollybush Beer. Thornbridge Jaipur. It was like going from drinking in black and white to full HD colour. And I think you could probably insert any beer in there rather than it specifically being Thornbridge Jaipur. But I think that quote in particular really, really summed that up nicely.
Yeah, no, it is a lovely quote, but I also do appreciate the Simple Things Fermentations quote as well.
Yeah, it's a tough one to actually nail down. Now, coming on to the main thing that we're talking about this week, which is back to the Fantasy Six-Pack and looking at what some of our listeners would pick. So obviously we asked the question. There was no poll attached to this one. We simply asked, which beers would you pick? This question in particular had over 700 engagements to it when we put it up on Twitter. We had over 80 replies to it. The most suggested breweries across all of the replies that we had were the Colonel, who had 11 different beers, and Cloudwater, who had 8 different beers. And to be fair, from those 8 different beers, I think 6 of them were 6 different versions of their original versions of their dippers that they tried back in sort of 2015, 16, 17.
Doesn't surprise me. People have their favourites.
Yeah. So before we dive into the listeners' and their picks, let's go back to our picks. So let's look at beers number 3 and 4 for us. Shall I go first?
Yeah, I was going to say
this time.
What's your third choice for your Fantasy Six-Pack, Steve?
Okay, so still going back, just a reminder that mine are all about time and place and that first time you drank a beer and the experience that you had with it. I'm going back in date order, so I'm back to 2018 now, and I am once again enjoying a beer from Beavertown called Heavy Lord, which ended up being both of our beers of the year that year, without knowing we had both picked that one. It's Imperial Stout, the barrel-aged Imperial Stout, which I think they did with 3 Floyds from America. That is thick and it is sumptuous and it is delicious and it's delightful. And it's got better every time I've had the delight to try that beer. And I've still got 1 bottle of it in my cellar. I just remember the first time I drank it, just sitting back and going, whoa, that is so good. That is so complex. There is so much going on in that beer. It's an absolute delight to drink it. And for me, I kind of needed a big beer in my 6-pack as well.
It's a big beer.
It is a big beer. It's what, 13-14% as well, isn't it? It's not a small beer. But yeah, that's going into my 6-pack as kind of my Imperial Stout entry, I guess.
It's a beautiful looking bottle as well. And yes, coincidentally, yes, we did have it. It's the same beer of the year that year. I had mine on a hot summer's day sitting outside the Beavertown tap room in Tottenham. Completely the wrong time of year to sit there and drink that beer. And I still had the same reaction as you, going, bloody hell, really? Cracking choice there, Steve. Cracking choice. If you're drinking these beers in the order you've described them, you're not getting to 4, 5, and 6, mate. Well, my third beer, and again, I haven't looked at my list. There's a little bit of a theme, but I've gone for a beer from Cascade, who I've only recently discovered when I put an order in with beer merchants back at the turn of the year or at the end of last year. This is their Creek Ale, so cherries. It's 8.1%. And for those who don't know, I'm sure most people are, Cascade is based in the States. Like I said, I do love these style of beers. I suppose we've got up to 7.4%, according to Untapped. The book says 8.1, but maybe it's changed over the period of 7 or 8 years. So it's a steady increase in my ABV intake. But again, it's a cork and cage bottle as well, or it was back then. It looks lovely. You need a 7, as you did, Steve. You've got a 750 cork and cage with your second choice. Yeah. You need it in a 6-pack, don't you?
I think so. I think you've got to have that little bit of extravagance in your 6-pack, haven't you?
Well, it stands out, doesn't it? It looks good as well. And hopefully, in my case, I'm hoping that the product inside that has been sold to me purely by the words on page 872 of the 1001 beers that you must try before you die, edited by ATJ. But it just looks wonderful. And the descriptions of it and everything about it just sounds absolutely fantastic. So yeah, beer number 3. And as you say, Steve, we will recap all of these anyway. So go on then. What's the 4th one? Where are you going? Where are you going with number 4?
Okay,
which journey and time?
I've got for number 4. I have a specific date for it as well. So this is from the 9th of August, 2016. It was the first beer I had that day, and it was after I'd spent the entire day traveling to the States. I landed in Florida for a visit to Disneyland, went to the supermarket, found Cigar City Invasion Pale Ale on the shelf, got back to our villa, opened the can, drained it, and it was the most delightful experience that I had ever had. That beer tasted like the nectar of the gods. It was crisp and cold and refreshing, but it was hoppy, it was bitter, it was full of flavor. It was everything I had been sold about US beer. And just drinking it in that moment, I was like, oh my God, I want to live here. It was just fantastic. And it's that one rather than the obvious Cigar City one of High Life, because that was the first one I had on American soil. And it's that moment again that I want to recreate, because obviously in August, temperature, even of an evening in Florida, is quite humid. It's still very warm. And literally bringing that beer straight from the fridge in the supermarket to the villa, cracking it open. I don't even think I put it in a glass, just drained it straight out of the can. It was amazing. I absolutely loved it. And that's the experience, again, that I want to recreate with my 6-pack.
It does sound amazing, especially the first beer, hot weather, cold beer, crisp, clean, hoppy. I mean, that ticks a lot of boxes. I presume the place where you bought it from didn't have High Life.
No, they did. They had High Life. I think we landed. I was in the supermarket about 10 minutes, and I already had about $60 worth of beer in my trolley. Hadn't even worried about food. I just went straight for the beer. There was High Life in there, but I was doing the sensible thing of going by ABV. So Cigar City Invasion's 5.5%. So that was the beer that I wanted to try. And I think the next beer I had after that was High Life. And then I was literally I was blown away. I was like, good God, this beer is amazing. It's because I think that was one of the beers that I was recommended by Matt Curtis to search out when I was in Florida, was Cigar City High Life. And I was not disappointed when I tried that.
No, I definitely have never been disappointed by having High Life myself. But yeah, you've definitely got that time and place in your head as well there with that one. But I like that. First choice, the first beer on US soil. Good one, that.
Why not? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this one may not be a surprise to people, but it does appear in the book. Pliny the Elder.
I knew that'd be on your list somewhere.
It may well be another bingo choice by a few people. It's every time I read a bit about this beer or see about it and think about it, it's one of those beers which it's got such a background to it, and so many people. Pliny the Elder may well be people in the States. Maybe they're Jaipur, they're Sierra Nevada, and they're Brewdog, the Pliny the Elder. 8% ABV, first brewed in 1999. It is a real wish of mine to try that beer. But I have to admit, I would be ever so grateful if a bottle of it just landed. But to go and try that at the Russian River tap room.
Yeah.
would be just absolutely perfect. And it may well fall into that don't meet your heroes category. But somehow I don't think so, judging by what people have said over the past. But even though they had these high expectations, I haven't seen many people seem let down by it. And that Pliny for president that we had last year, that Michelle managed to get for us, and that's not the original one, but that was tasting mighty damn fine when we had it. The West Coast IPA has made an appearance into my six-pack. It took till beer number 4 for that to happen, but it's there.
Yeah, I've got to say that's a little bucket list thing for me as well. Is to go visit the West Coast of the States and do the Russian River tap room, and also just go and live in Sierra Nevada for a couple of days. That's a beer geek's dream, really, isn't it? To go and drink beer on the west coast of the States.
On the West Coast of the States. In the place, I think you'd probably have a bit of a wow moment when you first went in. It wouldn't be necessarily have to be wow about the setup. It'd be that wow that you've entered, knowing that in a few minutes you're going to be having that beer that you have has had such an impact on you and that you love so much, and then you would just sit there. I think you almost need to take a moment to take it all in.
Maybe there's a little, maybe someone's cutting onions at that moment as well, and there's this water leaking out of your eyes. I can envisage myself sitting on a bar stool, and straight away I'm already getting emotional because the concept of sitting on a bar stool, but sitting on a bar stool in the Sierra Nevada tap room and having a fresh pint of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale just put in front of me. I think yeah, it'd be an onion cutting moment. That would, you just sit there and admire it for a few seconds before just diving straight into that, and I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it.
Maybe there's another fantasy thing there, Steve, for us without getting too emotional, hopefully.
Yes. So that's choices 3 and 4. We will come on to our final choices a little bit later. Let's get into what some of our listeners suggested in terms of their fantasy six packs.
So David from DW Markham, great idea with the fantasy six pack, guys. Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, Jaipur and Augustina Hells instantly take half the slots. Throw in a Saison DuPont, a bottle of Chimay Blue, and round things off with an Abbeydale Heathen. That's a quality six-pack.
I really like that six-pack. There's a little bit of something for everyone there, isn't there?
Yeah. And from Russ Clark at Gentleman of Beer, Augustina Hells, Fuller's ESB, Sierra Nevada Pale, Orval, Schneider Tap 6, and Pliny.
So from Russ that's obviously Russ from Amity. The first 3 beers there, hey, why not just create your own versions of those and make them in your own brewery? which is exactly what they did, wasn't it?
Well, guess where the inspiration came from.
Yeah. From Ian Hay at Hay, Chestnut Mild at the High Moon in Skidby, Spruce Saison 6 degrees north, Tetley was my first pub pint, McEwen's 90 shilling, New Boo brewed by Brew York, and Grimbergen Blonde, all for nostalgic reasons. From James Martin at Jim_Lancashire, Kane's Bitter at the Wheat Sheaf via Bell Service in Notty Ash in the 90s, Jennings Bitter at the Roscoe Head in Liverpool in the 90s, Theakston's Best at the Black Bull in Penwortham, Black Sheep at the Victoria Arms in Leyburn, Hetton Powell at the Craven Arms in Appletree Wick, and Harvey's Sussex Best at the Cricketers Arms in Brighton. So somebody going for sort of places as well that mean something to them for those beers.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was definitely a bit more outside of the small pack, six pack, but I love the nostalgia behind it as well. Love that. From your boy, Rob Edwards, 6-pack of Odell IPA, done. And in case anyone wondered, yes, that is definitely Rob's favourite beer, or one of, but he's definitely referenced that more than once in the past.
Yes, yeah.
And from Jezza, who we have mentioned at Bonvu, has anyone else said they'd go for 6 bottles of Avec Les Bonvu, 75 centilitres, of course? Well, not till now, Jezza.
No, but I've got one, but yes, and again, it has to be the 75 the 75 centilitres one, or the
If you're
750
gonna
mil.
if you're gonna go in properly, mate.
Exactly. From Wim van Dangle at Wim van Dangle. This is my IPA Happy Memories box. So Meantime IPA, 750ml bottle from around 2010. Dark Star Green Hop from around 2012. Stone Enjoy By Second 14 from 2014. Cloudwater Dipper version 3 from 2016. Leeds, Manchester, Newcastle by North Track and Wylam from 2018. And Burning Sky, Indecision Time, Nelson from 2020. From Jay at JZ1878, Green Duck Blonde, Smooth Criminal and Forged. Punk IPA, Jaipur and Flying Dog Doggy Style. Half nostalgia, half local greatness.
Some fantastic choices coming up. And just go back to Wim van Dangle. I quite like the Meantime IPA, the 750 cork and cage bottle has got a bit of love.
Yeah, that was Marks and Spencer, wasn't it? You used to be able to get that from.
Yeah, but like I said, first time I saw it was in around 2006 in Greenwich at one of the these sort of artisanal places, and I enjoyed that. It was it's a world away from most of the stuff they do now, but yeah, that's nice to get that bit of love there. Nice memories. From Ronnie Bean at Ronnie Bean. Budvar asked Mum to buy me Budweiser. Magic Rock Common Grounds. Magic Rock High Wire. Oakham Green Devil. Siren Broken Dreams. And Rabbi Burns Porter. Not familiar with the last one, I have to admit. But there's some good ones in there with the Common Grounds and the Green Devil, I have to admit.
Yeah, great shouts on those two. Two that probably completely passed me by when I was thinking about mine, actually.
Yeah, which, Common Grounds, you're a big fan of that.
Yeah, love it.
From Sean O'Reilly and Crulia, Lagunitas All Day IPA. He notes, my first craft beer. Duchess de Bourgogne, Happy Memories. Adnam's Nut Brown from his youth. Malden's Blackadder, first beer to ever make an impression. And Adnam's A6, best beer I've ever had. And Old Chimney's Hood King Henry, because I've never had it.
I think that might have been Good King Henry. I think that might have been a typo in there.
Brilliant. It's damn auto cue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the Adnams A6. Was that the one they did with 6 Degrees North?
Yeah, the big Imperial Stout.
Yeah, that's a good beer.
Delicious beer. That absolute delicious beer. Great shout on that one. Now bear with us a little bit on this one because this next one is from Miles Lambert, and Miles, in true Miles style, did this in 7 tweets. So it was 1 tweet for each of his choices in his 6-pack. But he prefaced that by saying the 6-pack format prevents Martin from picking Fuller's Vintage Ale, all of them, as one of his picks. Very clever. And he then goes on to say, so, going to start with an obvious choice, Russian River Pliny. Only ever had it once, a gift from the Ale Trail. And although often famed beers can be a letdown upon tasting, none of that was this. It surpassed my expectations, felt old school, classic, everything I love about IPAs. Next up, Burning Sky Flanders Red. This was the first Burning Sky beer I ever had at Indie Man back in the day. I remember how fond those serving it were of it and how classy it tasted. Set up my fondness for Burning Sky beers since then. Can I make an extra special request for a bottle of Magic Rock Cannonball? I say bottle because that's when cannonballs seemed to be magical to me. It was hard to get hold of, and I'll never forget that moment when I first opened one and the aroma grabbed my soul. I adore Imperial Stouts, and one of the greatest I've ever experienced was a Goose Island Bourbon County Stout, which 300 Beerheads shared with me as the final beer of 24 in 24. An 8-year-old version, and was delicious. To share it with a good pal was magic. I simply couldn't have a pack without Almasty Echelon, the free trade in-house cask beer, the place I long to get back to. And then finally, I will never forget the first time I travelled halfway across the country to a beer festival with very loose plans to meet folk. However, when I bumped into Steve within seconds of walking into my first Indie Man and promptly got whisked off for a Buxton, Wyoming sheep ranch, I knew I was in for a good weekend. Great memories there from Miles, and that's really what I wanted people to share as well was not just here's the 6 beers. I wanted some people to go into that little bit of detail around why are those beers special to you.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's really fun reading and listening to where people have added their own comments as well. So rather than just list the beers, and I've got no problem with lists. You know, me and you love a list. But yeah, that little bit of a sense of place, a sense of time, and in the, like the last one where I'm presuming he's referencing you as the Steve.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Because it sounds like the type of thing you would have done.
Yeah. Hi, Miles. Come quick, this beer. Have it now.
Yeah. And yeah, I was in for a good weekend. Probably half of it forgotten after starting off on Buxton, Wyoming sheep rants, I would suggest.
It's always a great starting place. But that brings us on really, really nicely to what we're calling the ultimate listener 6-pack. So from all of the suggestions that we had, and obviously we've only covered a few of them tonight. If you want to read through them all, again, there's a link in the show notes to the question. Click through on that. You can have a look at what everybody responded with. But we had over 350 individual beers suggested for this particular 6-pack idea. And the 6 that came out on top in terms of the most time they were requested. Now, how's this for a 6-pack? All Val, Russian River Pliny the Elder, Daya Steady Rolling Man, Augustina Brau Lagerbeer Hell, Saison DuPont, and Thornbridge Jaipur.
It's just missing a dark beer. That's the only thing.
Yeah, that is the only thing. Sadly, dark beers came way down the list. There wasn't really a single dark beer. I think probably the one that got requested the most was probably Guinness.
Oh, right, okay. I'm slightly surprised. I mean, Daya Steady Rolling Man as definitely the newest beer on there. It's not bad going, is it? I mean, that is a real favourite for a lot of people. Steady Rolling Man.
It's a beer that a lot of people sort of are calling a modern day classic, isn't it?
I would suggest people who say that are quite correct. That's it. It's in some illustrious company in that
Isn't
list.
It just? I mean, if you saw that 6-pack on a shelf, you'd be buying that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you'd be happy with that. I mean, I've recently reacquainted myself with the Augustina Lagerbeer, and it's just a cracking beer. It's just cracking, and it puts me in mind of when I was in Munich. You know, Russian River, I've already mentioned that as being one of my fantasy picks. I love Orval. You could probably have Orval broken down into subcategories of aging.
Of years, yeah.
But, yeah, that's not bad. You did well there, mate. Narrowing that down to the top 6 from the 350 suggestions.
Yeah, well, it's great. You know, everybody was fantastic with this, and it was brilliant to read through everybody's suggestions. So thank you to every single person that contributed to this. And please don't feel that this is the end of it. So keep your suggestions coming. Use the hashtag opinions, and you may very well find yourself in this next part of the show.
Let us know. Write it down. Let us know. Write it down. Let us know your thoughts and bitter and lingerness. Write it down.
Right. Another long message, this time from Rich Taylor, he of the Victoria Inn in Colchester. I can only speak for the Colchester area in regards to beer festivals, but my personal opinion is that the Canberra Beer Festival is beginning to struggle. This is due to more pubs putting on beer festivals, and also a few years ago, real ale drinkers would go to a Canberra Beer Festival as it would showcase beers from all over the UK and surrounding areas that you wouldn't normally find in local pubs. Nowadays, however, pubs can source real ale pretty much from anywhere in the UK, and they are putting on more beer festivals themselves. Canberra needs to reassess what their aim is. Real ale is bigger than it has ever been, but pubs are still closing at an alarming rate, and this will only increase. What Canberra needs to do is to refocus on saving pubs, training people and serving great real ale, and helping breweries to survive. A town-wide beer festival would help to support so many pubs, but also could help pubs that don't normally have a great real ale offering. It's about working together to keep real ale alive and flowing. Thanks for that, Rich. I think there's so much in that, in that message, which, you know, I think if anyone else wants to get involved in that, thinking about their own area, then, you know, please carry the conversation on. But Rich, as ever, thanks for listening and thanks for sharing. From Sean O'Reilly, our previous guest, Really enjoyed listening back to this, especially glad that I did. Otherwise, I'd never have known that I've now got my own jingle.
And continuing that theme, from Johnny Beerboy at Johnny Beerboy, the Uncrulier Statistics jingle is everything.
Statistic, yep. Statistic, yep. Statistic, yep. Statistic, yep.
It was just something I found on the internet that I thought would work in that particular part of the show. So if we've ever got any stats from Sean in the future, it may make a comeback. From your boy, Rob Edwards, at Rob Edwards 90, happiness at hearing my mates enjoying good conversation and good beers, balanced with a raging jealousy that I wasn't involved in that discussion.
Brilliant. Hard to picture Rob raging if you see his running update pictures, I have to admit.
Yeah. He's elite athlete status.
Yeah. From Simon Clark at Simon Carbon. Great show, guys. Good to hear Number Cruncher Sean on the show. Steve comments about Magic Rock Rapture reminded me what an awesome beer that was. I'm fully behind the campaign to bring back sparkled cask pints of that radiant red beast of a beer. You'd never tell from the language Simon's used there, but he loves it.
Hashtag bring back Rapture.
And from Michael at Mick McGrawty, great show. I always love it when the guest is a big fan of the show. And that is from current number one fan.
Yeah, it does always work so well when the guests that we've got on actually listen to the show as well, because they know what to expect from the discussions.
Yes, yeah, and it was good fun. So thanks again, Sean, for being on the show.
Yeah. From Jake Overton at Kellerbier, great show. How I never picked up on the Ryan Ghost Ship, I'll never know. I've only drunk it a million times. And then from Andrew Nichols at Andy RU73, Red Phantom and Camden on Sea are wonderful creations. I don't think we'd disagree.
From Paul at UNRCD, great show. It was great to hear what Sean had to say and more about his beer journey. I was lucky enough to have Camden Sea on cask, and it's a lovely beer. That it was good going, getting that one on cask in the short space of time it was out in the wild. From Rasco and Disco Beer Review at Rasco and Disco. In terms of quality podcast, look no further, or at least until we get one. This is great listening. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. It sounds like there's another podcast potentially to look out for soon. From Wayne, Irish Beer Snob, at Irish Beer Snob, my opinions catching up is much easier now I'm working from home. Just finished the end of year review. Proud to keep the Irish flag flying, folks. And I think today Wayne also posted that he's finally caught up on all the last shows. So that's good going, Wayne. Well done, mate.
Yeah, he's had a bit of a blitzkrieg on that one, hasn't he?
Yeah. And then finally from Mark Johnson, really enjoyed this one. Sean was the perfect guest for the beers and the poll discussion was great. Rapture was still being made on my last visit pre-COVID and a pint on cask is still always my first choice. Also loved the answer to Ron's question. Keep doing you. Thanks, Mark. That's really appreciate those comments.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. And again, some cracking comments there in the Bittering Lingler, Steve.
Yes, yeah. As always, just you can feedback what we're doing on the show. Use the hashtag opinions, and we'll find you. So we're coming to the end of our second beer. This Keller Pils for me is really hitting the spot. It's lovely. It's everything I want in that particular style.
The Kellerbier, I don't think is a million miles away from your Keller Pils. The main difference, thinking back to when I had the Keller Pils, is probably the percentage. This is 5.4 to your 4.6. Did you say?
4.9.
4.9. Yeah, it's got a bit more going on. It's got a little bit of bready quality, really well balanced. I mean, again, I've sort of dragged it out as we've been trying to stay lubricated while we go through all those comments and all the bitter and lingerness.
So let's move on to our final beer this evening. My third beer this evening is the Dunkel from Engel, and this comes in at 5.3%, and it is a lovely coppery brown colour with a nice big thick white head, and I'm very excited to try it. What have you got in your glass, mate?
A beer that sounds and looks very similar, Steve. However, mine is the Hefeweizen Dunkel version at 5%.
Let's waste no more time. Cheers.
Oh, I like that. It's definitely got a bit of that sort of a banana chew flavour and aroma going on, but not too much, not too sweet and sickly. But definitely feels more like a banana chew than a banana, as in the fruit itself. I like this feels like the right kind of beer to be drinking on a day like today.
Yeah,
Dunkel.
Yeah, when I tried that, I thought it was very reminiscent of an English bitter. And then I found it had kind of almost really, really subtle licoricey notes on the finish of it as well. I didn't necessarily get the banana from it because I don't like that in a beer. So I'm not. That's not a style that I'm a great fan of. But yeah, I just found it more reminiscent of an English bitter than anything else.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's definitely not a descriptor I would use. And in this kind of style of beer, then that sort of banana element is fine with me. I wouldn't want the majority of my beers to have a banana chew aroma and flavour, but that's sitting quite nicely. It's because it's a bit darker, it feels a bit more warming as well, and that could just be perception as much as anything else. What's your non-Hefeweizen version of the Dunkel like, Steve?
Oh, it's delicious. It's like a brown ale. It's kind of nutty. It's caramelly. It's malty, but it's still really, really refreshing. Kind of in the way that the Budvar Dark is. You're drinking a lager, but you're getting all of those dark characteristics from it at the same time. This is exactly the same. This is really, really delicious. I think out of the three beers, I mean, the Keller Pils that I had was great. But this just takes it up a level. And I think obviously having tried the three that you've done tonight as well. So out of the six of them, I think my pick of the bunch would actually be this Dunkel, because I think it's just working perfectly for me.
Again, I enjoyed the Dunkel when I had it, and it would definitely be up there. And now having the Hefeweizen Dunkel, the dark beers may just have the edge, partly because maybe like the Kellerbier and the Keller Pils, there are better versions out there. But this Hefeweizen Dunkel and the Dunkel you had, I think it will stand up to a few other ones as well.
Oh, yeah. And maybe there is an element of time of year in that as well. You know, we're drinking a dark beer in the middle of winter. It's maybe just working. Would this be as delicious and refreshing in the summer?
I think for you and I think we would probably say yes, because we've long said that dark beers aren't just for Christmas.
Well, I think both of us have gone on record many times to say that the Budvar Dark is our preferred beer that they produce.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, if Tesco do quite a good deal on their cans, if suddenly the dark beer ended up in cans and was part of that same offer, I'd have more of the dark beer than the Budvar as fridge filler. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm with you on that. So while we enjoy this last beer of the evening, we've got a couple of questions from our listeners this week. Questions fill my head. First up from Miles Lambert, because he didn't already get enough comments in this week's show. Some good news, some bad news. Bad news is you're trapped in one room for the rest of your life. Good news is you can have a supply of beer. However, you can only have one dispense. Do you go for cask, handball, or a keg tap? Choose wisely. Martin, away you go. King of cask.
Keg.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah.
You surprised me.
Surprised me. If I've only got one tap and I'm relying on that being the only supply of beer I've got, and it may be down to me to look after the said dispense method, I'm going keg, mate.
Okay, well, I'm with you on that then. I was always going to be keg, wasn't I? I was never going to go for cask in this situation.
No, I just think there's too much risk. You know, I've written down a note for myself. I don't want to risk poor beer, poor celery, etc. The only question is, I suppose, at some point we might actually have to name which beer it will be, Steve.
Well, I'm sure Miles will want us to follow up on that as well. But maybe that's another fantasy topic for us to visit at some point in the future. And then the other question this week is taking us full circle back to this week's news. So particularly around the Anchor rebrand, Ronnie Bean posted a picture of the new Anchor range and said, are solid blocks of colour going to be a labelling thing this year? And he then related that to a picture that I had posted because we were sent some beers by New Belgium, their UK brewed Voodoo Ranger, and their cans are solid colour with a single image on the front. So Ron was asking, does he think that this is the way that labelling's going this year and in the future? What do you think about that? I mean, I think we might have touched on it earlier on in terms of saying these beers are obviously being designed for supermarket shelves, aren't they?
Yeah, and that again, it is bringing us full circle because, yeah, the dominant colour on the Voodoo Ranger, which is being contract brewed out of 4Pure, is very much that orange background, which lends itself to the colour of the beer. The Anchor one, which we've already referenced, solid yellow, solid green, solid dark blue and brown. To me, they all feel like they're trying to dominate supermarket shelves rather than specialist retailers. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, but that's the environment that they're going into, though, isn't it? And if you've got all those things that look the same on a shelf, nothing's going to stand out.
No, it's getting a bit generic and samey. And you know the bit you referenced earlier with the M&S ones, which the example that Pete showed was the free beers that Adnams do with M&S. And we're aware, we know it's an M&S beer, we know they've used Adnams, but yes, it's quite a generic type of branding that they've used. Yeah, it's a very good question from Ron, but it's a shame we had to look at the Anchor one picture again, because it's just a bit depressing.
It is sad. It is. We've shared our views on that, and
we've shared our views on that. But I think Ron might be right. I think that solid blocking is definitely going to be a bit of a thing, and definitely a bit of a thing if you want to get into the supermarkets.
Yes, yeah. But as always, if anybody else has got any views on that, share your thoughts using the hashtag opinions. We're into our final picks of our Fantasy Six Packs. So we've got 2 beers left each. So Martin, what is beer number 5 for you?
10.5%. So double figures for the first time here, I'll add. A Flanders Oud Bruin. And it is from the States. It's called The Dissident, and it's from Deschutes Brewery. And I'm sure there's about 5 or 6 words I've used in the last 2 sentences that I have butchered completely.
I'd like to know, when you said Oud Bruin, why you did it in a Scottish accent.
I don't know. I don't know where that came from. But I'll be trying to avoid doing it ever again. This beer, 9%. Oh, no. It says 10.5%. It was 9% once. It's actually gone the other way.
Oh, so it's got stronger.
It's got stronger, yeah, which is quite unusual, actually, when beers get reframed, to be honest, I think. Tasting notes, magically tart and sweet at the same time. The fruit and acidity make this beer very food friendly, cutting the heaviness of creamy dishes or cooling spicy ones. Thanks to the cherry notes, the beer also pairs well with chocolate. It just sounds like a lovely beer. I like the sour Flanders old brown beers. Always been a big fan of those. I think it will sit very well with some of the other beers I've got, and will build up rather nicely to the 6th and final beer on my list. But before we get to that, Steve, going down memory lane, what's your 5th choice?
Okay, so I am all the way back in 2014 now. Both of my last beers are from 2014. So the first one is from late in 2014. It was around about November. I think I remember getting invited to the launch event. It was a beer at the time that many people were describing as an absolute game changer. And that is Camden IHL, the original Camden IHL when it was first released. About 6.5%. It was just a stunning beer. And I remember going to the launch event with a listener of the show, Justin Mason, who and we both drank our fair share of it that evening. And
fair share, Steve? Fair share?
Well, we had enough. It was an eventful journey home on the London Overground, that's for sure. The only words that can be used to describe that beer at the time were game changer. It was the first time that someone had taken a lager and thrown hops in it and made it as hoppy as an IPA. And it was absolutely incredible. And the launch event was fantastic. It was in this sort of underground space in Camden. Fantastic evening. And it's just, again, it's I want to be taken back to that moment in time where I first tried that beer and was blown away by what it tasted like.
Yeah, I've got a similar story actually, Steve, with the IHL. When Draft House reopened the pub on Columbia Road called the Bird Cage, I think. They did one of these soft openings. So I went there with Clayton after work and they were doing like 50% off. And I did decide that, IHL, it's about £3.50. I'd have pints of that. And I tell you what, though, yeah, it catches up on you.
It very much does. But yeah, what a great beer that was back when it was first launched. It was incredible.
Oh, it was a cracking beer, and it is such a shame that has been mucked around with since then.
Yeah, well, it does. For all intents and purposes, it doesn't actually exist anymore, does it?
No, for me, it's not. Yeah, it is a shame because I thought that was a cracking beer, and the phrase "game changer" I think is very appropriate actually for that beer.
Yeah, it's the only word that fits with it, really. What's your last beer of your 6-pack?
It's from Port Brewing Company. It is 11%. It's described on Untapped as an Imperial IPA, and it's called Hop 15. And the reason it's called Hop 15 is because it has got 15 different hop varieties in it.
What?
Exactly. So apparently, it was brewed as a special for the 15th anniversary of the Pizza Port restaurant in Solana Beach, California. It's now an all year round brew, and originally they put 15 different hop varieties in a hat and pull out on a piece of paper, and then that's the order the hops would be added.
Excellent.
As well.
I love that.
So do I. In a certain amount, and I think again at the time I don't know how big a brew it was, but they were using 15 ounces of the hop. So the hop 15 runs through the name quite a few times. And so 15th anniversary of the pizza place, 15 hops, 15 ounces of each hop. Tasting notes: a huge hop aroma spills out as soon as hop 15 is uncapped. The flavours follow through on the hoppy promise with a backbone of malty sweetness and a pleasant measure of alcohol. Now that sounds right up our street.
It's like it's almost in the realms of the Dogfish Head 120-minute IPA.
Yes. Yeah.
In terms of how aggressively hoppy it might be.
Yeah, I just love that little bit of that. They've sort of hit on this 15 anniversary amount of hops. So yeah, I would absolutely love to try that beer, and that is the 6th and final beer in my 6-pack.
Excellent. I mean, that's a great 6-pack, but we'll come back and we'll run down the 6 choices after I've shared my final choice. Now, this is another one that has a specific date attached to it. So this is from 22nd of August 2014, and it's one that's probably going to surprise a lot of people. Actually, it's Punk IPA. But
why that date though? That's what I'm curious about.
Because it's a bottle of Punk IPA that I was given straight off of the bottling line by James Watt when I visited the Brewdog facility in Ellen. It was incredible. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of theatre about being handed a bottle of beer straight off of the bottling line by the owner of unquestionably one of the biggest breweries in the UK right now. But it also tasted fantastic. It tasted really, really good, and it was as fresh as you like. It's literally straight off the bottling line. It was the first press trip I'd ever been invited on as well as part of the Beer O'Clock show. So there's a lot of memories attached to it in regards to that. It's where I first met Wayne, the Irish beer snob as well. So sort of friendships were formed at that time as well. But yeah, just that little bit of theatre of James picking a bottle off of the bottling line and handing it to everybody in the group and saying, here you go, here you go, here you go. The most amazing tasting bottle of Punk IPA you're ever likely to have straight off of that bottling line. It's just one that really, really stayed with me. And yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by that one, but it's the whole moment thing with that particular bottle.
Well, you say, but according to your list, the 350 beers chosen, Punk IPA was would have been high up there, and people have it as part of their beer journey, their beer awakening.
Yeah.
Again, we've referenced it plenty of times. Other people have referenced it plenty of times. There's lots of baggage which comes with Brewdog. But I remember when we presented Punk IPA in one of our early beer tastings at work, and that was really a Marmite beer. There were some people who were completely blown away by it. We had the 660 Bombers as part of a beer festival. So again, it looked a bit different for a lot of people. And then there was people going, I can't get past the bubblegum. That bubblegum aroma that you often used to associate with Punk IPA. And they were going, well, I had to spit it out or throw it away. I couldn't drink any more of it. And then there were people who absolutely loved it and fell in love with Brewdog as a part of it. So, yeah, I can understand that, mate. You're in Ellen, which you would never have chosen to go to. You would have suddenly said, I'm going to go to Ellen today. I mean, blimey, it's so far north from where we live. You must have got a nosebleed on the way up there.
Absolutely, yeah, without a doubt. But yeah, it was just one where I will say there were a lot of beers vying for this 6-pack. I've actually got 3 6-packs that I was unsure as to which one I was going to go with, and the one that I went with, I could attach more memories to each of the beers than with the other 2 lists. But yeah, for me, it was like I say, just that moment of, you're caught up in this excitement of being on this trip and you've met all these amazing people, and then you're handed a bottle of beer straight off of the bottling line, and it was just tasting delicious as well.
We've talked about it before, like, beers in certain places, memories, the olfactory system. I mean, one of the guys, or one of the people who came back to us on the poll picked beers from the 90s in places. And some of those places may not even exist now. I don't know. So there's obviously a lot of memories attached for people. I mean, is this a good time for you to revisit your whole 6?
Yes, yeah. I'll just run down my 6 so people have got it all in one place. So Elusive Brew Oregon Trail, DuPont avec les Bon Veau, Beavertown and Three Floyds Heavy Lord, Cigar City Invasion, Camden IHL, and Brewdog Punk IPA. That's my fantasy 6-pack. Let me revisit that every time, and every time I open one of those beers, I'm going to get that memory again because that's what I've kind of associated with each of those beers. What's your 6-pack, mate?
So again, I'm going to do it in the low to high ABV. So we have the Louis Pep Framboise from Cantillon, from Hopworks Urban Brewery, the Survival 7-grain stout, followed up with the Cascade Creek at 7.4%. The infamous and much lauded Pliny the Elder, 8%. Dissident from Deschutes Brewery, Flanders Oud Brune, 10.5%. And finally, the Hop 15 Ale Imperial IPA, 11%. All of my beers were chosen from Chapter 5, Speciality Ales, 1001 Beers to Try Before You Die. And I have to admit, it's one of these books that I have had for a while. When people think about, you like beer and you end up with a book, or if you're really unlucky, you end up with one of those supermarket world beer packs or something. Luckily, this was the book. I actually made me go through it all. I actually went through the whole chapter. And these beers, 5 of them were Cantillon, obviously I'm familiar with, but Pliny the Elder, heard plenty about. But some of the other beers I'd never heard about at all. And just the picture and the words was enough to draw me in and go, yeah, you're going to be in my fantasy 6-pack. However, I do have other lists on the go as well, I have to admit.
Yeah, like so I've got another 2. So, I mean, maybe this is one that we do Fantasy 6-pack 2 and Fantasy 6-pack 3. I think this one's potentially got legs for us to revisit. But I have really, really enjoyed thinking about those choices and thinking about the 6 beers. And it's been great listening to what everybody has said in terms of what their 6 beers are as well. And yeah, it's been a really enjoyable kind of fantasy trip again, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. And also we went for very different themes as well.
Yeah.
So that was quite nice because it's complete compare and contrast. And the beers you've chosen, some of those beers I can picture moments as well. I reckon that on people's beer bingo, Unhuman Cannonball has let a lot of people down on that accumulator, mate.
Yes, Cannonball, Rhiney. as well. Sorry to everyone that had that on their bingo, but just felt maybe a little bit too obvious for me to do that. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I do enjoy these fantasy shows. They are a lot of fun because they let us run a little bit wild with our imagination as well. And this one in particular, this one in particular has been great. Like I say, for me, because it's allowed me to revisit moments in time as well and attach memories to beers, which I've really enjoyed doing.
Yeah, no, it has been fun. So if anyone else got any more fancy suggestions, please keep them coming because we will find a time to use them.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm amazed. I said this to you in preparation of this show, but it's been almost a year since we last did a fantasy subject.
I was really surprised.
And that really surprised me because I thought we'd done one in the summer, you know. But it's been nearly a year since we last did one of these, and they're fun to do. So as Martin says, keep the ideas coming. Use the hashtag opinions. We will find that. Final thoughts on your last beer this evening?
I'm really enjoying it. The banana aroma and the banana flavour sort of eased off as I've got used to it. It's probably not a million miles away from the straight Dunkel right now, but I've almost finished it. And I think, having tried the six beers that we got sent through from the Sausage Man, very much like a lot of the beers I experience from Germany or when I go to Germany, they are all, and this is not meant in a disparaging way, they're all solid.
Yeah, they are solid beers, yeah.
All of these beers were solid. I've enjoyed every single one of them. The Kellerbier and the Dunkel have probably been my two favourites. But yeah, I've enjoyed them. And yeah, the screw cap, maybe we'll come back to that again one day. It's still a bit of an oddity for me. You know, we haven't really opened the beers on air because there's no real noise to make with a screw cap.
There's no theatre to it, is there?
And that's the thing. There isn't a theatre to it, is it? It's not. There's no cap coming off and a bit of a hiss. There's no cork and cage. Even a can brings you more theatre than a screw top. I would be curious to know why they've gone for a screw top. The Germans do like their drinking just when they're walking around, unlike over here where it's almost frowned upon, the public drinking. You can go to a lot of the kiosks and buy beers. So I don't know what sort of market these beers are aimed at in Germany, but maybe there is that element of, well, they're going to pick it up from the kiosk. They're probably going to want to drink it within the 5 minutes of where the kiosk is. Therefore, why do we want to make it difficult for them?
Yeah, and you've also got the potential of resealing it as well, haven't you, in the bottle?
Yeah, I've never tried that.
No, why would you? why would you reseal a beer?
What's your final thoughts on your Dunkel?
I'm loving it. Certainly out of the three beers this evening, it's been the one that I've enjoyed the most. I think I mentioned earlier, probably out of the six beers that I've tried, it would be the one that's at the top for me, closely followed by the Keller Pils after. But as you say, they're just solid beers. They're really, really solid. But and we are really, really appreciative of the Sausage Man for offering us to send us these beers to try. And if you want to try them yourself, there is a discount code available for our listeners on the Sausage Man website, which will be linked to in the show notes. The discount is Beer O'Clock 15, and that will entitle you to 15% off of beers and also their sausages that they sell on their website as well. So if you want some German sausage and some German beer, head over to the Sausage Man and use the discount code and get yourself 15% off. Give them a try. You've got nothing to lose, really.
No, cool. Like I said, solid beers. I might have a look at the sausages myself.
I think there are a few people that would be interested in the sausages, actually. Yeah. But really, really enjoyed them. What have we got coming up next time, mate?
Very excited.
I'm very excited about our next show. Yeah.
About our next show, mate. We have the head brewer from Roosters joining us, Ollie Fozzard. We know we're going to talk about the brewery. We're going to talk about the history, the importance of provenance, and best of all, we're going to drink Roosters beers on the show.
We are. They are a brewery that hold a special place in a lot of people's hearts. I mean, they are widely recognised as being one of the first craft breweries in the UK, if there is such a thing, but they certainly were the first to start experimenting with American hops when Sean Franklin owned and ran the brewery.
Yeah.
But yeah, very much looking forward to having Ol on with us and chatting to us about how it's still a family business now and their approach to beers and brewing and essentially, continuing putting out great beers during a very, very difficult time that we still find ourselves in. So really looking forward to that. If any of our listeners have got questions for Ol, let us know. Use the hashtag opinions and we will make sure to ask them. And with that, I think we probably are wrapping the Fantasy Six Pack, aren't we?
Yeah, it's been great fun, Steve. I've enjoyed the beers. I've enjoyed learning about your Fantasy Six Pack and sharing my ones as well. And I really look forward to this conversation carrying on Twitter.
Yeah, me too. So likewise, enjoyed listening to yours, mate. And we will be back soon to enjoy some more beers. Cheers.
Cheers.